My eating disorder started with a plate of chocolate chip cookies, and 40 years later, it ended with a plate of chocolate chip cookies. I tell people that it started when I was 14 years old, but I really think it started long before then. I was a heavy child, much heavier than all my friends, and oftentimes when I was on the playground or on the bus ride home, I would be teased about my weight. There was a boy on the bus who made up a song called "She's Too Fat for Me," and it would end with, "I don't want her, you can have her. She's too fat for me." He never said my name, but I always thought he was probably singing it about me. So the summer before my freshman year in high school, I decided I am not going to go back heavy. I'm going to lose weight at all costs. And I did. I lost 30 pounds that summer. 1 month into high school, there was a camp held for middle school students, and they asked freshman students to be the counselors at that camp. I was asked to be one of the counselors. And on the last night, they had a dance party with a huge dessert table filled with chocolate chip cookies. I don't know how many cookies I ate, but I do remember waking up in the middle of the night, running outside of our cabin, and got sick to my stomach. And from that moment on, every time I overate, I would go to extreme measures so that I wouldn't gain weight. On the outside, I lived a perfectly normal life, but on the inside, I was struggling. After 40 years of those behaviors, I ended up having a heart attack. It happened outside of a Walmart. When I collapsed from the heart attack, there were two men that came to my aid. One of them was an off-duty police officer who knew CPR. The other one was a band director who happened to be at the Walmart to get his glasses fixed, and he had just taken a CPR class. A third officer was radioed in for backup, and those three men kept my heart alive. When I arrived at the hospital, they put me in a medically induced coma to save my brain from the trauma it had been through. They didn't know my name. They called me Jane Doe, but my friend was an emergency nurse. She saw me and said, "I know who that is. That's Cindy Richardson." She called my husband, who was 13 hours away on business, and she said, "We'll try to sustain her life until you get here." He called our 5 daughters and flew them all in. And when I woke up from the coma 4 days later, I woke up to my 5 daughters and my husband and doctors who were confused as to why a woman with a perfectly good heart and no history of heart condition, why would she suffer from a heart attack? What they didn't know is what I really suffered from was bulimia. And I never told them. I kept the secret for 5 more years. You would think a heart attack would be enough of a wake-up call to stop the behaviors. And it did for a few months. But slowly, I got caught back up in it. Until one night I went to bed with a plate full of chocolate chip cookies and a glass of milk. I got into bed with a book. I took one bite of that first cookie, and something inside of me shifted. 40 years of a struggle was coming to an end. And now I help other women who struggle. So if you are caught up in any kind of disordered eating, reach out to me and let me help you break free.